Kia ora, hello, it's Thursday the 2nd of July. I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining me. We've got a polar burst of weather on the way. It's going to drive in some rain, some snow, some gusty winds and lower temperatures as we go in through the weekend and across next week. Let's kick off with the satellite imagery. You can see the low pressure here around Tasmania and south of Australia moving in towards the Tasman Sea. Cold front ahead of it with all the thunderstorms and the cloud that's ahead of that. But at the moment, we've got fairly dry weather around New Zealand. We had frost going up to Auckland again this morning, which means it was cold right across the country, although not all the South Island had frosty weather due to some cloud coming through and that developing northwesterly wind that's ahead of the colder change that's coming our way. So a lot of high pressure around New Zealand at the moment. You can see that on the air pressure map as we go in towards this evening. High pressure out right over the top of the Chatham Islands and a secondary area around the North Island, which means another cold night tonight and again the chance of some frosts. But as you notice around Cook Strait, the northwesterly wind starting to pick up and that's moving into the South Island, so temperatures will start to go up as we go in towards Friday. And all this low pressure out around Tasmania is moving our way with a new low that's going to form off the west coast as we go through the weekend. So noon Friday, we start off with high pressure right over the top of the Chatham Islands. So settled weather for you, light winds extending right back into most of the North Island, other than from about Manawatu southwards. That's where you'll notice that northwesterly, and even up around places like Tararua and Hawke's Bay, you may just notice the temperature up a degree or so, may not be noticeable for everybody as that wind starts to arrive. We've also got a few showers up around the eastern side of Northland, potentially some northeastern parts of Auckland and around Great Barrier Island, but it's not going to add up to very much, still mostly dry. In the South Island, the winds, they do pick up across the day. They'll be strongest through the mountains and in the southern half of the island, with rain also mostly on the southern half of the west coast, although you do see showers going right up right there towards Farewell Spit. So northwesterly winds aren't going to be very cold. The cold weather is back over here towards Australia, at least on Friday it is. By Saturday, the cold polar boundary moves closer towards us. So by the end of Saturday, that's pushing into the southwestern corner of the South Island and southern areas with a temperature drop. That means the heavy rain that's over here on the west coast will start to fall as heavy snow higher up into the mountains, especially later on into Saturday and going into Saturday night. So heavy rain on the west coast with a few thunderstorms. That will start to move northwards as we go through the later part of the day. You can see the front. So notice how these green blobs get kind of smaller the further north you go. That's a sign that the front is weakening as it runs into all that high pressure, which is out here to the east. So the Chatham Islands still pretty much under high pressure. You've got a northerly wind, maybe a shower, and north to northwesterly winds picking up around the North Island, also dragging in a few showers. So those showers that have been around the eastern side of Northland slide a little further down as far as the Western Bay of Plenty, maybe East Cape. Dry and warm for this time of the year for those of you along the eastern side of not just the North Island, but coming down into the South Island as well. And a wee bit of that wet weather does spill over into Southland and Otago. So here is the outlook for Sunday. Sorry, that doesn't say Sunday on the map here, but this is Sunday's setup. So the polar boundary pretty much covers the entire South Island. It likely will do at some point during the afternoon. That means some of these showers will be falling as snow flurries. That could go down to 200 or 300 metres. We'll update you the snow level tomorrow when we can fine tune it a little more. And you can see this low pressure zone just off the west coast. Now that low is going to deepen and move in towards the North Island as we go through the weekend. There is a little smaller area of low pressure further to the north here, so we've got a little bit of rain coming down through Bay of Plenty, East Cape, and maybe as far as northern Hawke's Bay. Showers around the western side now of Northland, who've been missing out on those showers recently. That comes into Taranaki, Horowhenua, and as you notice around the South Island, the western side has the higher risk of showers, but you might see some showers moving over to the east because in comes the southerly, and that's the cold part. I mean, this is going to get colder as we go through the weekend. So by Monday, the polar boundary over most of the South Island, the Tasman area perhaps and Nelson on the outer edges of it, whether you notice that or not, I'm not too sure at this point. The low pressure zone is off the coast of Northland and Auckland. The main polar boundary is out here over the South Island and being sucked right across the Tasman Sea. You can also see this blue line around the upper North Island. Now that is connected to the polar boundary but kind of snapping off. And so that means up in the atmosphere, 5 kilometres above sea level, very cold. And so that can bring in some instability along with the low pressure, which means showers that form during the day might become heavy, a little bit unpredictable. The main rain band, though, is coming into Bay of Plenty and East Cape, and then that subtropical airflow, and that doesn't mean it's warm, but it's full of moisture, is coming back in to the lower North Island, Wairarapa, the same places that were flooded just a few days ago, have the risk of some heavy rain coming through. And of course, with the polar boundary up and merging in with that, you could see some pretty heavy snow through the mountains around Marlborough and into Canterbury or North Canterbury. Again, we'll update you on the snow level as we go through into Friday and again on Monday. But this is going to be a pretty wintry day around the South Island. Now, low-level snow doesn't necessarily mean it's for everyone. Just like rain showers, snow showers can be hit and miss. And the further south you go, the drier the weather becomes. But we do expect some snow flurries around most of the ski fields at some point from the weekend and going into next week. Maybe not so much around the North Island to begin with, but that cold level there means that the blue line means that, you know, the mountains in the middle here of the North Island have a chance of getting some snow. On Tuesday, the low moves across the North Island. So it does that Monday night and across Tuesday, it tracks over the upper North Island. Now it's a large low. The centre of it, not overly stormy, but they can be a little bit unpredictable. But this large area of low pressure means that the area of heavy rain is still kind of moving around a bit as the modelling tries to lock in just exactly where the low will be placed and how packed the isobars will be around it. So at this stage, heavy rain coming into the lower part of the North Island and pushing into the northeast corner of the South Island, with snow more likely to be heavier into the South Island mountains, although some snow is possible in the ranges around the lower North Island. There could be some large dry spells between the low that's moving away and this band of heavy rain that's coming on through. It's leaving the Chatham Islands away for now. You've got a northeasterly wind coming through there. So we'll be monitoring this area here to see Canterbury to Marlborough, how low the snow goes, and again also around Otago there could be some snow flurries, not necessarily producing a huge amount of snow based on this moisture map. You're not seeing a lot of wet weather coming through there, but the chances of it. And by Wednesday you can see just how large this low actually is, sort of stretching right down to the lower South Island. And again, the centre and the shape of that low matters because it decides this subtropical rain band where exactly it will lie as we go through next week. So you saw it around the lower North Island for a time. It may slide further southwards. Part of the reason we're getting these wet easterlies, and we talked about this in the Climate Watch video we put out yesterday, is the southern placement of high pressure this winter so far south that the way the winds go around it, anticyclonic, is encouraging easterly winds and higher risk of low pressure forming around the North Island. So what's happening around the Southern Ocean at the moment is making a difference to our weather around New Zealand. But here on Wednesday, there might be heavy rain and snow risks around Canterbury and Otago, maybe a little bit into Southland. The North Island, yes, there could be a little bit of snow around the mountains and ranges, but it's more about rain, I think, around the North Island here on Wednesday of next week. So a few things to focus on. Here is the 4-day rainfall through to the end of the weekend. These areas in pink around the North Island, very low rainfall, if any at all. So fairly dry also for large parts of Canterbury, but the West Coast rain becomes heavy. Push that out to 7 days, and now you see the heavy rain risks clipping the lower part of the North Island and coming in around the northeastern corner of the South Island, but also the chance of some heavy rain into the Tasman area. Welcome rain, I'm sure, by farmers at least, and those that rely on rainwater around Canterbury. We hope that that rain pushes a little further south into Otago as well. So rain and snow in the forecast, messy kind of a weather forecast coming in for next week. So we'll update you again tomorrow, Friday.